I have Ben Wienburg's deck list here. You'll see Ben on the left. He's playing Rug Delver, an archetype he's pretty well acquainted with. Ben and Nimble Mongoose go way back to the Canadian Threshold days. This incarnation, obviously, very similar. As far as the interesting choices, Ben is running the full amount of Stifle, the full amount of Spell Snare in the main deck. He's not running a supplementary burn spell, just relying on his Lightning Bolts, but he does have one Grim Lavamancer. One Grim Lavamancer.
And on the other side, we have blue-black, sort of a tempo deck, and it also has Phyrexian Dreadnought and Stifle, an oldie but a goodie that we may see come out in this match. Eric's starting off with an Inquisition, responding, well, to Ben's Delver, taking a Lightning Bolt and seeing a couple of Stifles, Polluted Delta, and a Force of Will.
Yeah, I'm imagining that Eric is not too scared, especially now that he knows those Stifles are there. It looks like he opened on a duel, and I think he has another duel in hand, so he's not actually going to be vulnerable to the disruption of the Stifle.
Yep, and we see in Eric's hand Force of Will, another Delver comes down.
If you're not going to get a spell with your first Delver, a second Delver is not a bad find.
Yep. And we'll see if he can flip those this next turn. A Ponder comes down for Eric.
Ben will just have to watch on jealously as Eric ponders.
Ah, my Delvers. If only I could ponder. We see a Dreadnought. And
That's a Dreadnought and a fetch land.
We'll see what he chooses to draw.
Thoughtseize, I believe.
So Eric's hand, Thoughtseize that he just cast, and a Force of Will. A few other cards.
Well, he knows what he's getting with that Thoughtseize if he cast it, so I imagine it's the Force of Will. Yep, there it goes.
And Ben just left with two Stifles that, as you said, now that Eric knows they're there, probably pretty reasonable to assume that he's going to be able to play around them to some extent.
Ben checked the top card of his deck for one Delver trigger and then put it back, but it appears to be a card he likes. So he's considering drawing it instead of shuffling it. He did draw it. I imagine... Okay, Wasteland. I was about to say, I figure it has to be either a Wasteland or, I guess, a Tarmogoyf maybe is good enough to keep in this spot.
Yeah, and we see that Wasteland being especially good because both of Ben's Stifles are holding Eric off of being able to use fetch lands to develop his mana base. And a Vision Charm comes
we're
out.
going to have to pop Vision Charm up on screen for you guys. Vision Charm, or the deck's fifth Stifle. Well, that's a Phyrexian Dreadnought, which is what he did cast the creature. 12/12 Trampler. When it comes into play, you have to sacrifice any number of creatures with total power of 12 or more, or you have to sack the Dreadnought. But Vision Charm allows you to phase that Dreadnought out. That's right, phase it out, and avoid having to sacrifice for its trigger, as opposed to Stifle, which just straight up counters the triggered ability altogether.
All right, it has another couple of abilities, just trying to see if either of those look relevant. Mill for 4, and changing the basic land types.
Yep.
So probably not going to see those.
It can be a pretty bad fixer, although the Mill for 4 does come up when you want to reset a bad Ponder or a Brainstorm.
Oh, good point. Good point.
The Delvers again failed to flip. Amusingly, these Delvers are actually a pretty reasonable clock racing against a Phyrexian Dreadnought, depending on what Ben can muster from here, if he could flip them. Flipping them this turn would have been excellent. Next turn might be too slow.
Yeah, Eric down to just 13, so if these flip, they'll be just shy of a 2-turn clock.
Looks like we're getting a ruling on Vision Charmer asking some questions. The Vision Charm, when it comes into play, phased creatures are not considered to enter the battlefield, so it won't be triggering the Phyrexian Dreadnought's ability, obviously, won't be the use, but it'll also be able to attack the turn it comes into play. Sort of like Obsidat, build 1.
Exactly. Do you know how phasing interacts with Stifle?
You cannot stifle phasing it. I don't believe it stacks. Actually, I have no idea. I don't think so. Or
you cannot
stifle phasing. That's from our judge, Daniel Schoenbach, or Shoebox if you happen to know him, on the director.
So those Stifles in Ben's hand still not.
I imagine Ben is confirming very much the same thing that we are as far as the rulings regarding Stifle in this situation. Would have been pretty awkward if that was how it worked, given that Eric knew there were two Stifles and deliberately tore his hand apart, but obviously Eric probably knows exactly what he's doing with a Vision Charm. Most people who cast Vision Charm know exactly what they're doing with it.
Yeah. Either milling for 4 or making a bunch of land swamps, I would say, usually. Those are the only things I've ever used it for. I'm going to see Tarmogoyf come down. So
yep.
One of the cards you mentioned as being good enough to not try again on those Delvers with a fetch land.
Yeah, he may be able to use it as a healing salve functionality here, except it's not going to resolve. Force of Will removing Vendilion Click.
And important to note that Force of Will does drop Eric to 12.
Yeah.
So if those Delvers flip, they are a 2-turn clock now.
Ben, however, is the one on the 2-turn clock. So he's going to need some help. I imagine, I'm trying to think what he could hit here. Something like a Brainstorm into a Tarmogoyf would be ideal. Brainstorm, trigger the Delvers, cast the Brainstorm, find Tarmogoyf or something along those lines.
Yeah, something to slow the Dreadnought down. I think they're maybe discussing when this Dreadnought comes back exactly. Let me read.
Ben might be wondering if there's any instance of missing a trigger here. Of course, we just discovered that phasing isn't a trigger at all. So.
Yeah, I'm wondering when that card would phase back in if it was phased out during Eric's main phase.
I believe it's the upkeep.
During Eric's upkeep?
I think phasing just brings it back in the following turn's upkeep. If it's phased in, then during the next upkeep it phases out, but whenever you're phasing out, it just always comes back in the next upkeep that it was not phased.
All right.
Or that it was phased.
Not confusing at all. And
there's a reason we don't phase anymore. I'm just saying. We're not going evergreen with phasing.
Dreadnought comes in for a bunch of damage, and those Delvers. Ooh, wow.
I think Tombstalker's going to shut the door on Ben here.
Yeah, really potentially back-breaking Tombstalker. That means even if these Delvers do flip, which they won't, and that's the game.
Yeah, Ben's ice cold to those cards in play. Moving to sideboarding, Ben knows what he's up against now. I imagine we'll see him bringing in his Spell Pierces. Those seem pretty reasonable. He might even... The Corrosion Grip also seems fine. Your opponent's going through a lot of work to put a 12/12 into play. If you just K-Grip it, even if it's 3 mana, pretty good deal. Beyond that, the only things I see him maybe doing is something like Blurred Mongoose to just get another threat, because Grim Lavamancer is not really pulling his weight.
Yeah, I agree with that. Did we mention Pyroblast as an option?
I guess Pyroblast is fine. I feel like I don't like Pyroblast generally against the Thoughtseize decks, just because they'll always know what they're walking into in most circumstances, and they can also kind of pick around it a little bit. But it's definitely a viable option. It's better against Stifle Knot than against many of them, like Esper Stoneblade, a deck that's actually not that soft to Pyroblast, or because it has its combo cards obviously are reliant on blue mana. Phasing happens just before untap we've had cleared up, so the more you know.
Didn't know there was anything before untap.
I don't think there is. I think this is all just a horrible, horrible nightmare.
Yeah, the reason I like those Pyroblasts is because he can create a 2-for-1 situation where Eric plays a Dreadnought and attempts to use either Stifle or Vision Charm to save it. If Ben has a Pyroblast that he can resolve, that could go very favorably for him, and Eric could lose both the blue spell and the Dreadnought. I mean, it's a stretch. Eric does have discards, so in a lot of cases he's going to know when the path is clear. So we'll
I actually think that they seem fine to bring in just because of the blue cards, like Brainstorm and Ponder as well, making it worthwhile. Ben actually has a fair number of cards that aren't especially good. We already saw that his Stifles are, not exciting, but he also has Spell Snares, which have virtually no targets. Like Daze being, I think, the only one in the main deck. Obviously not an ideal target for Spell Snare.
Yeah, very few, and not exactly something you want to be spell snaring.
Yeah, so he's going to be boarding out probably all 4 of those. And we already mentioned the Grim Lavamancer ×1. Not that great, although he doesn't know that Eric actually is running 4 Delver of Secrets, so it's possible the Grim Lavamancer could help him out if he does wind up keeping it in, but I imagine he'll be pulling out the Spell Snares and bringing in the cards we discussed. Oh, I actually missed he has an Ancient Grudge as well. Ben's handwriting, little something to be desired, but he does have an Ancient Grudge, which answers 2 Dreadnoughts for the price of 1.
Yeah, Ancient Grudge pretty much shutting that entire plan down. We'll see if Ben takes out all the spell snares. He may leave 1 or 2 in because he doesn't have Eric's deck list like we do. And, just might not know that the 4 dazes are the only real targets there. In Eric's sideboard, we've got a couple of Submerge. Could come in to try to put Tarmogoyf or Delver back on top of Ben's library, buy some time. Maybe, don't think I'm a huge fan of Submerge in this matchup, but could be good. We have a Dismember that kills Delver's secrets and gets rid of most Tarmogoyfs.
Yep.
I think I like that a little more than Submerge. It does cost life in some cases, but Eric's got quite a number of black sources, so it's often just going to be a removal spell. And he could also bring in a couple of spell snares. They're, not actually that much more reasonable against Ben.
His do catch Tarmogoyfs. That's about it. But I think if you're looking at that kind of work, you probably just want to go with the Submerge at that stage.
Yeah, very good point. Same thing as we said, as I just said earlier, though. Doesn't have Ben's deck list, so he may bring those spell snares in, assuming there are more 2-drops. I think, as Glenn said, though, he's more likely to go with Submerge if that's what he wants to be doing. Most players that get this far with a good record, fairly knowledgeable about these kind of lists, especially a known quantity like Rug Delver.
I think the biggest enemy for Ben in the sideboard games is probably going to be Tombstalker. He's actually pretty well set up if he wants to beat a Phyrexian Dreadnought to do it. But Tombstalker, once it resolves, is really tough to beat. He'll need to combine, multiple Lightning Bolts or a Delver flipped and a Lightning Bolt in order to do it. So he's going to be hoping to delay that with things like Force and Daze.
We see a Delver come down for Ben, and Eric uses Disfigure to get rid of it.
And a beautiful basic swamp. I like the flower swamps. They're
Yeah?
wonderful.
Basic Swamp, facing down a couple of Volcanic Islands and a Delver. We see a Force of Will in the front of Eric's hand.
Yeah, he has
Delver
a
of his
Tombstalker, a
own.
Force of Will, Submerge. He just cast a Delver and a Brainstorm and a Polluted Delta. So we have... Eric's hand's actually pretty well set up here. His opponent does not have a forest yet, though.
We see that Delver flip. Not something Ben was able to do in game 1. And a Ponder comes down.
Still had all these Ponders. I don't see any green cards in Ben's hand, although I can't be sure. I saw a bunch of blue ones.
Yep, and Ben just thinking about his options here.
There might be a Tarmogoyf on the far right there, actually. He doesn't have access to green mana right now, I'm pretty sure, unless he found it with the Ponder.
Oh, yeah, it looks like he did pick up a Wooded Foothills there. And,
he does have a Tarmogoyf in there.
alright, we'll see if he chooses to deploy that. A little risky against a deck with 4 days, but he also needs to present a clock, and seems like he chose to just pass.
He declines.
Delver not flipping, but it is attacking. And Ben drops to 19, Eric at 17. A couple lands in play for each player. Delver flipped for Ben, Delver unflipped for Eric.
Yeah. Eric's hand is actually, his Tombstalker's not looking that great just because he doesn't have a lot of ways to get cards into the graveyard very quickly, unless Ben starts helping him along.
One funny use for that Vision Charm, if he does have it, to mill himself for 4 and essentially be used as a ramp spell for that Tombstalker.
Effectively a Dark Ritual of sorts.
Yeah, nice little extra uses for that card. And it's maybe less desirable
Vision Charm
modes.
needs it, I mean, it's so versatile.
Yeah, phase out an artifact. What more could you want? There are tons of artifacts. Eric drops a Scalding Tarn.
The Brainstorm was spell pierced by Ben.
Yep.
He fetched his Tropical Island to do it.
And we'll see that Delver come across. Maybe a little bit awkward for Eric playing that land after Spell Pierce came down.
We've all had those moments for sure.
Definitely. And Volcanic Island looks to ponder again. see if he likes any of those. I think I see a Force of Will.
And a Crow's and Grip for sure.
Yeah, Crow's and Grip gives Ben nice insurance against a Dreadnought, but doesn't do anything against the Tombstalker in Eric's hand.
And as we know, Eric has no Dreadnought.
So, see what Ben chooses to do.
I believe he kept his Ponder and drew the Force of Will there. So, Eric's looking to flip his Delver. He looks like he's failing to. He doesn't even want to draw that card. He's done with it. Ben says, "Whoa, hold your horses." Yep.
Okay.
He's going to stifle the fetch.
Activation will get stifled. So he will draw that card that he doesn't necessarily want. Delver comes in for 1.
The card was a Wasteland, it looks like. Unless he had that in his hand before.
Ah. That doesn't seem all that bad.
Doesn't seem so bad. I'm reasonably confident it was a Wasteland, because I'm pretty sure he had Delta before.
Yeah, a little bit of a sequencing thing here. He wants to cut Ben off from green, probably, but that forest is what would allow him to play Submerge for free.
Right.
So he has to be sure he's a little careful with that. And, we do see that Crow's and Grip drawn for Ben.
I think he's going to go ahead and play his Tarmogoyf now, while he still has the chance. He saw that Eric played the Wasteland, but didn't want to use it.
Yep, and Eric could now use that Submerge on Tarmogoyf and then get rid of the green land, stranding it on top of Ben's deck and potentially having it be a draw that Ben can't use, at least now. And Eric pretty deep in the tank here, shuffles a Submerge to the front of his hand.
I think he's considering Force of Willing Tarmogoyf, actually. He appeared to decline to. I'm not sure. He grabbed both of them at the same time, so that's kind of what makes me believe that was a consideration.
Yeah, I'm sure he was considering that option.
Whoa, he's firing the Wasteland now?
Unless it's tapping for mana.
We definitely will have to respond to our own Wasteland with the Submerge. I think he's seeing if Ben has another Stifle, like hoping to bait it out here. That seems a little bold, though.
Yeah.
Because if Ben just nods and lets it resolve, his Submerge no longer does anything, and Eric's hand is almost totally bricked. All he'll be able to muster is casting Tombstalker, perhaps this turn or perhaps next. And yeah, Ben lets it go. Eric's past the priority point to be able to Submerge anything.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that Submerge now sitting dead in Eric's hand until he either gets to 5 mana or Ben puts another forest into play.
He can use it just for forcible bait, but that's an uphill fight.
Yep.
Looks like he thinks he has just enough to play his Tombstalker through days now with Forcible in back as well.
That may be the case, and like you said, Tombstalker can take over a game against Rug Delver. So, let's see what he's able to do here. Eric with a couple of Underground Sea Swamp, unflipped Delver against Ben with a couple of Volcanic Islands, a Tarmogoyf, and a flipped Delver. Eric with Tombstalker, Submerge, Force of Will, and is that a land in his hand?
I believe he has another land, that he drew this turn.
Polluted Delta.
Yeah. I believe the Tarmogoyf is also a 3/4.
Okay.
I'm not 100% on that.
Very.
Or no, I'm sorry, Disfigure, so it should be a 4/5 because that killed a Delver on turn 1.
Yep, very important for how well it's able to combat that Tombstalker. But the Tombstalker is going to remove Eric's graveyard. I wonder if that changes the size of the Tarmogoyf at all.
I think Ben had all the types, yeah.
Yeah, land, creature, instant, and sorcery I think are all in Ben's yard, so.
No, both players forced there, each displaying some patience as Ben is holding on to a Stifle that he had declined to use on fetch land.
Then we see a second Delver come down here now, the Tombstalker bigger than any of Ben's creatures, but a little outnumbered here.
Yeah. It's definitely bigger, but it also can't race.
Yeah.
So, at this point, we're sort of stalemated.
Yeah, Eric at just 8 life. Another Tombstalker, I think, is what he drew.
It is, and he has another fetch land, so if he can get 2 more cards into the graveyard, then he'll be able to cast that one as well.
Yeah, 1 more fetch land, and he, I
also,
think,
a fetch land will do it, yep.
Yeah, 1 more fetch land will give him 5 mana, the Force of Will and the 2 fetch lands in the yard will allow him to cast that Tombstalker. So, pretty close, actually.
Ben takes a long look at the top card of his deck.
And no flip on that Delver there. And Eric doing the same. No flip. And we'll see another Delver come down. Like you said before, if you're not going to flip Delver, might as well draw another one. And this Delver gets flipped.
A saucy draw, Brainstorm. Definitely can't be disappointed with that one.
Yeah, does Ben still have that Crozen Grip?
Yep.
So probably looking to trade that in for something a little better.
Yeah, I don't think he's too worried about Dreadnought at this point.
And Ben thinking about what he wants to put away for now. I see a Wasteland drawn that probably won't have too much effect on the game at this point. 4 lands over for Eric. And the Wasteland kind of just breaking even as far as casting, the ability to cast a Tombstalker goes, because it does add a card to Eric's graveyard.
Ben kept the Crozen Grip, and he's shuffling up with Polluted Delta to go ahead and grab a forest, I imagine.
Huh, I wonder what exactly he put away then. And we did see that Submerge exiled the Force of Will, right?
Yes, the Submerge is gone.
So coast is clear for that forest to come back. Give Ben the opportunity to cast that Crozen Grip if he wants to, and we're going to see a Ponder. So, you know, nice for him that he was able to shuffle, see 3 new cards with this Ponder, and flipping through them pretty quickly. We're going to see a shuffle.
I think Ben would really like something that lets him get the Tombstalker out of the way. Even if he has to trade an Aberration into it with a Lightning Bolt alongside, that would not be the worst here. Not the best, but...
I think a Lightning Bolt is exactly what he's looking for here. Something that allows him to go back on the offensive. Eric is at a much lower life total, and if Ben can ever start attacking, it's probably pretty bad news for Eric. Ben draws something off that Ponder, thinking about his options, and goes in with the team. So maybe he did get a Lightning Bolt, maybe something else. We'll see how this combat pans out.
Yeah, this is an interesting attack. Eric's making what seems like a reasonably standard block. It's possible Ben just decided to trade his flipped Delver for an unflipped Delver here, assuming that in the stalemated situation, once those flip and can start attacking him back, he'll actually be behind. Which is not that bad a trade, considering it comes with a complimentary 3 damage.
Yeah, 3 damage, which is really big when Eric's only at 8. Falling to 5 now. And as we talked about, if he does have to use that fetch land to cast a second Tombstalker, it's going to drop him even lower, almost to the point where a Bolt is just lethal. Another Delver for Eric. And Ben's in a little bit of trouble, I think.
Yeah.
It could go either way.
This time around, I think Eric, unless we have the Tarmogoyf size wrong, and I don't think we do, I think this time around Eric will have to eat the Tarmogoyf if Ben tries an attack like that. It was definitely a consideration last turn, but he wouldn't want to go down to 1 Delver against 2 flipped ones. That's a bad spot to be in.
Yeah,
so.
I'd agree with that. And Eric looking at his card, he may be considering sacrificing that Polluted Delta to shuffle and get another chance with that second Delver to see if it can flip. Probably, yeah, it looks like a card he wants, so he just chooses to draw that. And we'll see what it is.
I gotta be honest, Delver Secret's not impressing me in Eric's deck.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of Delvers not flip in this match between the first couple games.
And Dillian Click. I don't think Ben wants that to resolve. It'll upset the balance of air offense and defense that he's currently struck. And it looks like he has a Forcible, so I imagine we're going to see him counter.
Yeah, if that resolves for Eric, he will be able to start attacking, as soon as next turn.
Looks like he'll Brainstorm first. Nimble Mongoose, not a bad one, and 2 lands. Less effective.
Yeah. So putting a couple of lands back, a fetch land on top, so that when he does draw that, he can shuffle away the other land. Not quite putting that away yet. Takes the fetch land back.
Considering throwing away the Crows and Grip.
Yeah, which, we know is a reasonable option. Coast is clear, but Ben maybe still worried about that Dreadnought after it basically took over the first game.
Given that this is Eric's turn, he's actually definitely, going to draw the next card. So I think he pitched the Grip just on the off chance Eric, has some random discard spell he's been holding on to. That's obviously pretty unlikely at this stage, but it's strictly the same unless he had, an Inquisition of Kozilek or some random thing.
That's a good point.
Or oh no, this was during his draw step. I thought Eric just main faced it. That's interesting.
Ben's draw step. So opening up the click to possible counter magic, which we did see.
Well, it is also the same line with now if Eric draws an Inquisition, the Crows and Grip is tucked away on top, should Ben decide he needs it.
Yeah. And Eric choosing to fetch here, losing a life. I believe this is after the first Delver trigger, right, on Eric's turn?
Seems probable. He also is now at the point where he can just hardcast the other Tombstalker in his hand. I say hardcast it, but that's the only way you cast it, but it doesn't feel like it.
I think that's a Stifle drawn for Eric.
How did we... I'm curious how we got a Stifle in our hand and didn't flip a Delver.
Huh. It's a good question. I may have seen it wrong. No,
I think Eric maybe just missequenced. I agree. It's definitely a Stifle. He doesn't have any non-Delver, blue cards in the deck. I guess click, but it's not one of those. Unless this is his fourth Vendilion click, and because it's definitely a blue card. I think he may have gone ahead and let both triggers lapse inadvertently.
And we're going to see the graveyard removed to use Delve to reduce that Tombstalker's cost to 4. And now 2 Tombstalkers down for Eric, and Ben's on the back foot. Eric just at 4 life. We'll see if Ben can come up with anything to send this to a game 3, or if the Tombstalkers are going to take it.
Yeah, he'll be on chump blocking next turn.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Tombstalker just huge in general and huge in this matchup. Ben really not having a good way to get it off the table.
Forced to pass the turn.
And no flip. I think a Wasteland drawn by Eric. We'll see how aggressive Eric wants to go. This could be a moment where game swings one way or the other. Both Tombstalkers obviously lethal right now. Would force a block, but would leave Eric with just 2 blockers of his own. So how does Eric want to play this? Looks like one Tombstalker is tapped, taking a little more conservative line. Although attacking with both Tombstalkers and forcing the block from the Delver,
I think that seems better. He's probably just really scared of what Ben's last card could be. Unreasonably so, I might add.
Attacking there and forcing Ben to use his Delver to block effectively removes the Delver anyway, and so it's going to be 1 less attacker, 1 less blocker. It'll even out. Ben at 3, Eric with 2 Tombstalkers, Ben with just a flip Delver to block. I think we may see both Tombstalkers come in here. Eric looks like he's just deciding how many Tombstalkers to attack with. Each turn that goes by is another chance for Ben to draw a burn spell, or a draw spell that could get him to a burn spell. So Eric does need to be a little mindful of trying to close this game out quickly. And picks up both Tombstalkers, turns them sideways, and that's the game. So Eric Prem defeats Ben Wienburg 2-0.
Yeah, Eric's Tombstalkers definitely decided the game, as we thought they would be the deciding factor in the post-board games. They're the card Ben has the most difficulty answering. It's pretty easy to slide them through counter magic when you've got enough hand disruption. Certainly not especially vulnerable to days.
Yeah.
It worked out.
Yeah, and you know, really saw those larger creatures from Eric. In game 1, the Dreadnought, and in game 2, the Tombstalker take that match over. And we are going to have